everyone, welcome to March's ROC Game Dev Workshop. I'm Sam, the workshop coordinator, if you aren't familiar, and welcome for the month. Oh, hang on one second. Sorry, having some audio issues. That works. All right. Thanks for your patience. In case you're new to ROC Game Dev, just so you know, we have workshops like this on Twitch the last Wednesday of every month, and they're archived on YouTube for your viewing leisure into the future. So you can go back and watch our 2+ year archive and watch any of our future workshops if you can't catch them the night of. We also have a whole bunch of other events that you should definitely check out over at rocgamedev.com and over at our Facebook page. We're also very active on Discord and Twitter, and you can catch us there as well. If you'd like to host a workshop, I would love to hear your ideas, either for things you would like to see a workshop on, or if you would like to present something in particular. You can chat with me on Discord, Sam_Catamaran, and you can probably find me on Twitter, although that's the least reliable way to reach out. So with that, I want to introduce our workshop tonight. Denny McCorry and Lesther Reynoso are going to be talking about Shot in the Dark, giving a postmortem on their launch of the very well-known local game. I'll hand it back to them to start the show.
Hi, hello. Thanks, Sam. Hi, I'm Dennis McCorry. I am the lead developer of Shot in the Dark, and I am the art side of Possum House Games.
And I am Lesther Reynoso, the tech side of Possum House Games programming.
Yeah, as you may have guessed, today we're going to be talking about our process with Shot in the Dark, development, and what worked and what didn't. And we'll kind of be going over the whole thing chronologically, hitting all the points as we bumped into them. And so I'll be kind of hogging the mic for a bit, because Lesther wasn't there for a lot of the early stuff. But I'll be tagging him in to talk about the things that I tagged him in to work on. Before we get going, I should probably talk about, for those of you who don't know, what is Shot in the Dark? So Shot in the Dark, it is a Western occult kind of game where you're a bandit on a quest for revenge, and demons happen and shenanigans ensue. So the core mechanic of this game, what makes it so unique, it's made up of three core mechanics. It is a 2D pixel platformer, kind of standard. It's also coupled with a point-and-click shooter. Think sort of like maybe like Duck Hunt, kind of like a light gun game. And the whole thing is when you're aiming, you can't move. And same thing when you're reloading or shooting. So you kind of leave yourself vulnerable. And the third core mechanic is the aesthetic itself. A lot of the enemies and hazards in the game blend in, so it's hard to see a lot of the enemies that you're dealing with. So all of this coupled together makes for a really nasty, tense, and wholly unique experience. So yeah, that is what Shot in the Dark is. And from here on out, we'll kind of be going chronologically from the very beginning. So as a lot of you may know, Shot in the Dark was accepted into the Magic Community Incubator Program, which is run by Magic Spell Studios. It's kind of the sister program to their Maker program, which they run for students. And for both programs, essentially what they do is they provide funding and support and hardware to either indies like me or students to make a game. And that's where a lot of the story is going to take place, is during that program. But there was before times in the wild, and let's start there. Where I come from. So yeah, before the incubator, I have a background in traditional illustration. I was a solo hobbyist dev delivery driver trying to make games on my own free time. I had no programming, animation, or game development background, and I say this not as a sob story, but to kind of 2 points. One, games are and game development is becoming way more accessible. So for all of you who are watching, it's if I can do it, you can do it. And also, this kind of this speaks to my process and how I approach games. Is trying to do a lot with a little. So also, I do have some experience. I wasn't completely, I did launch my first game in 2019, The Sword and the Slime, and that took about 3 years of my free time, part-time as a hobbyist. And a lot of the lessons we're going to talk about today are actually kind of in response to my experience with with Sword and the Slime. So essentially, it's going to be like, do as I say, not as I do, because learned a lot the hard way. So, Shot in the Dark. Very beginning, it started as a lot of games do, is kind of an experimental jam. And going off of what I was saying before, Shot in the Dark was a process of what can I build with what I have. I don't have a background in this. I kind of know how to animate. I'm pretty good with pixel art. I do not know programming. Computers still scare me to this day. So it was an exercise in I have 2 sticks and a rock, and I have to share the rock. But what can I make with that? And that's kind of the core of Shot in the Dark is everything I showed in the trailer. Everything was the easiest answer. Like the fact that the point and click shooting the light gun mechanic, that was very easy for me to program. There's no bullets to deal with. There's no edge cases to account for. Palette and the small scope of the game, and I didn't have to do really complex animations. The character designs were really simple. They didn't even have hands. So like little 4-frame animations. Only working with 3 colors. Everything was the easiest answer. The clever part was trying to do something interesting with that. So that's kind of my whole shtick. All that being said, is in this kind of experimental process that I found Shot in the Dark. Shot in the Dark is not my dream game. I see a lot of developers, especially younger ones, try to make games that they like. And I actually don't, me personally, I don't like hard games. I'm not a Celeste or Super Meat Boy. That is not my jam. I am a baby. But turns out I really like making those kind of games. It was through experimenting and just bouncing around ideas. I was really inspired by Minute and just how they did a lot with just 2 colors. So then also on the other side, I was playing with a point and click shooter. I was like, oh, as an artist, that's really easy. I can just make posters that I can click on to shoot. That's really easy on the programming side. So I had all these different ideas floating around. And then I just kind of I had the idea of Shot in the Dark. I just kind of jammed it out, and I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is fun. I haven't seen this before. And that's when I started running with it. I didn't go oh, I want to make Red Dead Redemption, or I want to make another Halo. It was I stumbled on something and I ran with it. Shot in the Dark could have been just as easily a sci-fi shooter, but I found a game mechanic and then I slapped my interest on it, and I just happened to like cowboys and demons because I think they're cool. So yeah, that's advice number 1. Don't chase after ideas. Find something. Explore. Experiment. So yeah, early on in that jam, I built a 7 to 10 level prototype, and first one of the first main levels in the game was the first level I made, and it barely changed in the 2 years of development. That first concept, virtual slice, was a literal virtual slice. And yeah, so all of this was designed early on and stayed consistent through development. And this is what I brought to Magic, is that I had a core gameplay loop nailed down. I had a aesthetic just it did not change pretty much at all. That's what I came to Magic with. Ooh, taking a breath. Up, up. Yeah, it was actually around this time that I started working with Lesther. Hey, Lesther. So yeah, so yeah, early incubator. So we got accepted into the program in late December. No, it was this, yeah, December of 2019, and we kind of went from there. So during the early incubator, I want to talk about a few things. MVP, I'm going to rant about this a lot. I have a bit of a reputation, and most of you know what I'm going to say already. I'm going to break down our budget. I'm going to talk a bit about contracts. They're not that scary. And playtesting, and then I'm going to pass it off to Lesther for some Steam and platform stuff. So MVP, this gets thrown around a lot in game development. And for those of you who know me, I am the scope creep guy. Like I'm like anti-scope. I cut everything down. And yeah, your MVP can always be smaller. And I want to talk about how we approach our particular mindset when it comes to making an MVP, a minimal viable product. And despite what some people might think, we actually don't cut anything. In the brainstorming process, we actually say yes to everything. Then we just prioritize, and this is how we do it. We actually break down our MVP into two different sections. We have what we like to call our bare bones MVP. And yeah, essentially this is, it's not the game you want, but it's complete. The art is not up to par. The story is just non-existent, but like it runs and you have a gameplay loop. And if push comes to shove, you can launch this out the door. I'm actually gonna take a step back. So our overall philosophy, at least mine personally, is I like to call myself a hopeful pessimist. And that's, I like to create a worst case scenario. I like to make that as good as possible. So a lot of, when you graduate, there's always that old guy who inevitably says, shoot for the moon, you land among the stars. We are the opposite of that. We like to make whatever the worst case scenario is, we like to make that as good as possible. So we're okay with it. Like, yeah, you know what, if this is bad, it's going to be, this is all right. So that's our core mindset. And then we build off of that. And that's, so jump back to this. Everyone's MVP. That's so when the realities of game development kind of happen, you run out of money or your publisher's like, we've got to launch. Your bare bones MVP, like that sets you up that like, no matter what, you'll have a game. You can hit launch. You won't be stuck, with something that was unfinished. You have to leave like in a graveyard. So that's good. After that is our ideal MVP. It is the absolute smallest version of your game that you're happy with. This is like the story is complete. It makes sense. Like your core mechanics are there and they're polished. You don't necessarily have any like extra weapons or anything or like, new characters, but story's there. The art looks the way you want it to. The music's all there. It is the absolute smallest version of your game that you're happy with. And from there, we said yes to everything, and then we just prioritize it. Like something that'd be really cool to have, and it's not that hard to like make. And then that goes in stretch goal 1. Like sure, no problem. Like, extra levels that are just like nothing to it. And then you go to, and then there's like it's important. It's kind of hard to do, but that still kind of stays in stretch goal 1. It's like 1, or just ideal MVP. And then at like stretch goal level like 10, you have like that extra 3-phase boss is like, is fully voice acted and has like 10 phases. Like that would be really cool, but it doesn't like, it's not required for your game. So I would encourage any aspiring devs or just devs or in general, just to push as much out of your ideal MVP as possible and push it into stretch goals. And your game will be better for it. Because you'll actually kind of hone in on what your game actually is, and you'll polish your core gameplay. It's like just a pearl. Honestly, a lot of the stretch goal stuff you don't really need and might actually subtract from your game. So just push it. Just push it out to stretch goals as much as you can. Whew. All right. Magic. So the Magic Incubator Program, they gave us, $10,000, which is a lot of money, but it goes a lot faster than you think. Especially when you do what I did, which is quit your day job, because I'm nuts. But I figured this is the one time we'll be able to do this, so I'm just going to go all in. That being said, about half of that money went to, just music, programming, tech support, video editing, and cost money just get onto Steam. And then a big chunk was just PR, which I'll get to later in the presentation. And this kind of gave me a burn rate at the time till roughly early summer. So I had a few months to make a whole game. Contracts and collaboration. Lesther will be tagging you in for a lot of this, but yeah. So contracts are not as scary as you think. Friends make contracts. Me and Lesther, we get along. We're great. We make contracts. So I'm going to actually pass on to you. I got a drink of water.
Sure. Overall, contracts are not something to be afraid of, as mentioned here. When Denny first approached me on helping out with Shot in the Dark, we've already been working together. We worked together well. I enjoyed working with him. I enjoyed the game, and so I was excited about it. However, I had a full-time job and a lot of other stuff going on, so time wasn't infinite. So we had to come up with a contract, and some of that entails from my perspective was pricing myself, identifying how much it would cost in terms of an hourly rate to help Denny out with some of the things he needed for Shot in the Dark. And that was the conversation, right? I came up with a price that I felt best represented my skill set, the skill set he was requesting, or the services he was requesting that I would be providing. He came back and said, "Great, this is how many hours I can afford for that price." And having figured that out between us, we went into the logistics here. What happens with the code that I generate or any of the content I generate? Can I use it for my own stuff, my portfolio? Can I use it somewhere else? In this particular case, it didn't apply, but that's something else you can discuss if you do find yourself in that position. I create a bunch of art, not me specifically, but then you in this case. Can I use that art in some other way? Can I use it in some other? Can I post about it in my personal portfolio or social? Do I have to wait until the game's released? These are all things you can discuss and make sure you have written down in the contract, and make sure you have a clear understanding between yourself and the other party of it.
And
Having figured out how much time Denny could afford, given the price I'd come up with, we had worked together to collaborate and figure out where to prioritize that time.
that's where don't haggle, negotiate comes in. Is that I did not I had a whole list of things that I needed done that I could use Lesther's help with, and I just prioritized it because I couldn't afford him to fix all of it. So instead of, and I say this to approach these in good faith, don't haggle, negotiate, just figure out. I did not at one point ask Lesther, could you bump your rate down? I was like, all right, I need this much done. I can afford X. So I picked the top 5 things. And yeah, and another thing about, and so with contracts, they are always fluid and negotiable before you sign it. They are very malleable, and you guys can discuss what you want that to be. And kind of a lot of what Lesther just said, it's we don't assume nothing. Or we had musicians on the team. They own their rights, and then also so for assuming nothing, think of all your edge cases. It's what if Shot in the Dark made a lot of money? We actually include that in the contract. It's if we hit X number of sales, you guys get a kickback because we're not going to forget you. It's when can I use my music outside of Shot in the Dark? We just asked and answered those questions. So just ask, and this may not be the best legal advice. My best thing to say is when approaching collaborating, at least pretend that you're making a contract, and take it that seriously. It shows that you take each other seriously. You also taking yourself seriously, and yeah. Yeah.
And also,
That's
I'd
anything?
be open to amendment, right? So, having
Yes.
come up with an initial contract and the initial set of edge cases does not mean you consider everything, especially as life changes, things change in the project.
Mhm.
Be open to be able to revisit that and renegotiate.
Yeah. I know me and Lester, we touch base on contracts all the time. I'm just like, hey buddy, how about yeah? We have those conversations all the time. And if you're working with someone like that, that's a good sign. Like it's a big red flag if like you even try to have this conversation with somebody and they're just like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Like don't do that. On the flip side, always read the fine print. I know everyone says that, but really do it. Um, and like you can again like ask those questions before you sign anything. Um, yeah, I think that's everything for contracts and collaboration. Uh oh. Yeah. So for Shot in the Dark, difficulty in playtesting. Um, I'm sorry. So as you all know, Shot in the Dark. Well, as a lot of you know, Shot in the Dark is a notoriously hard game. And as I mentioned kind of at the top, uh, I'm not. I don't like playing hard games. I actually don't consider myself, I guess, a try-hard gamer. But when you're working on something like 40 hours a week and you're playing that same level, you're gonna get good um, at your own game. So kind of like keep that in mind and have constant feedback going. I was fortunate enough to even before the incubator, I had about like 6 months to a year where I was showing that the prototype at like different events. So I would have complete strangers who would come up and play, and they will give you your honest feedback. Um, so I had found a nice balance of people were getting frustrated, but they always came back to try to beat it. Like to the point where like I had people who would like slam the table, get up, walk away, do a circle, and then sit right back down, and usually had some choice words for me. But they kept playing. So it's a bit of an intuitive thing trying to find that balance. But obviously, if someone's just like sighing and getting frustrated, then like you're like, all right, maybe I should tweak this. Um, but on that note, when you're playtesting, this is a lot harder, easier said than done. Is don't help your playtesters. You just have to let them try to figure it out. Which was a lot of fun for me because I'm a monster. Haha. Um, but yeah, it's if you're answering your questions in the play, if you're walking your players through the playtest, then people, when you launch the game, they're not gonna have you to figure it out. But yeah, and if your game is too hard, a lot of what I did was just taking those hard levels and just splitting them up. And so I turned a problem into like a really good productive solution where I was like, cool, now I have 3 more levels. Haha. Lester, do you have any comments on difficulty in playtesting other than you're upset?
No, me being upset was a pretty good summation there. I was one of those playtesters. Yeah.
So yeah, difficulty in playtesting. What do you mean? I'm going to pass the mic over to Lester for this one, just for context. So when I joined early on the incubator program, one of the first questions they asked me was, so what's your I forgot what it's called. To help me.
What's
Thing.
your oh wow, yeah. What's your source control?
Yeah, and I just said, "What's that?" And then all their eyes went wide. So
Yeah,
I'm going
anyone
to
who uses
pass
source control regularly for development purposes for any reason would be, like cringe at hearing something like that, myself included. But yeah, I don't know if you have more to add to that, Denny, or
No, it's all you.
all right. One of the things that started up really early was that this game was built on Construct 3. The Construct 3 engine is a web-based engine. It could be downloaded offline as well, but um, one of the biggest challenges we had when I came on to kind of help with some of the tech issues was integration with Steam. That kind of led to the lesson of kind of understanding how your engine of choice is going to integrate with the release platform you're targeting. Um, Release platforms have specific requirements sometimes, right? As Steam has their Steam API and SDK that requires XYZ things to occur to make like Steam overlay work, achievements work, those sorts of things. I know consoles have their own as well. Um, the Switch has their own SDK. You imagine PSN and Xbox has theirs as well. Consider what the integration of those APIs and SDKs work earlier rather than later. In the Construct 3 case, there were a lot of cases in which something that would be intuitively integratable or easily understood didn't work. A lot of the integration didn't work, and I had to go through a lot of deep dives into the research and forums and all that stuff to kind of root out the source of the problem. And uh, uh, for the most part, a lot of that stuff was experienced by other people, other developers. So it wasn't too bad. However, it did lead to the lesson of understanding if you're going to release on Steam, think about how your engine's going to interact with Steam. If you're going to release on another platform, think about how your engine's going to work with that, and make the decision early on to choose an engine that would allow for integration of your release platform requirements early on. Another thing is understand your release platform as well. Steam is a huge platform. It's one of the largest for PC, I think. Itch is also great for indie devs. It's a lot lightweight compared to Steam, but a lot of the greatest community members you'll find are on Itch. They say the sweetest things, and it's just heartwarming to hear all the positive feedback you get from Itch. Itch is way more approachable than Steam. That's just the straight. This is how it is. Steam is huge. Itch is smaller, and it's a lot easier. But Itch also has its requirements. It also has less requirements, but also has those requirements you have to meet, whether they be marketing assets with regards to logos, descriptions, graphical requirements. Steam has a set of those as well. One of the lessons we learned is to give yourself time to create that material. Right, you may have completed your game, the game's ready to launch, but now you have to deal with your release platforms and the steps between getting your game on there and pressing the release button.
Yeah, there is so much that goes into onboarding for Steam. Like it's like you need more time than you think. It is getting all of those assets together. So many visual assets.
Can
And then there's go ahead.
You have to just agree that there are a lot of visual assets requirements. Some of them are optional, but obviously you do want to put your best foot forward when you do release a game. So we do try to fill as much of that as possible. Um, One of the biggest things that can benefit you there is when your game is complete is not your release date. There should be a huge amount of time separated between when you're done developing the game and when you're ready to release. That allows you for the
Huge.
time to fill all that stuff out.
Yeah, we did this pretty early on. Like this is still this was like early March, actually maybe late February that we had all of our Steam stuff set up. But yeah, it will take a lot of time. You have to also account for like having your uploading your build and being approved. Like that's going to take like maybe a week or like that will take a week or two. Get stuff approved.
For Steam, it did take a couple weeks, but that time varies
Yeah.
depending on how much they have available on their bandwidth end.
Yeah. So yeah, there's you need a big window when you're messing with Steam, and set it like just honestly, you want to be in a point where you can put everything down just to focus on Steam. But yeah, is lovely. Construct is good for people like me, bad for people like Lesther. That's why we get along so well.
Yes,
But yeah,
that hurt so much, Jenny. Just hurt. You wounded me with that one.
But I think that's everything for platforms and engines.
Oh, not to say
Yeah,
Construct 3. Construct 3 is a great engine for prototyping. I actually use it myself. It's very approachable. Very much enjoy it. Would not release a game on it if I had the choice, but I am a programmer and I do have the ability to program with other engines.
Yeah.
But
we did kind of shoot ourselves in the foot, both for the platform and the kind of games we make. Getting something like on like the Switch is very difficult, if not impossible, with Construct. So knowing your engine and knowing what's like capable to do and just what you want to do. Like if you're super small and just want to get on itch, use Construct. It's so lovely. If you want to get something a little more robust, find a Lesther. So this brings us to the kind of late incubator / COVID part of the timeline. So around March, and when we kind of got on Steam and we launched our demo, we were actually pretty early on. We actually had we were really close to ideal MVP. At this point, the story was done. So what I did was I bookended it. I had the kind of inciting, beginning, story stuff. and then I sprinkled in like the narrative throughout, and I had like how it was going to end, and the final boss and everything. So the final boss is actually done pretty early on before a lot of other levels were done. And what this allowed me to do, kind of going back to that bare bones MVP approach, is like, right, I have a game that even if I only have 10 levels, the story's there. I just proceeded to fill out the middle with as many levels as I could. So yeah, around this time we had launched our demo. That did pretty well. We had our Steam page up. They're getting wish lists. Game was, most of the parts were there. We had a little bit more work to do, like kind of like the saving and menu select stuff. That's actually what I brought Lesther on for. I was like, Lesther, help me. So yeah, game was in a good spot. And we're also in a unique situation of Magic was really good about like they were really hands off in the sense of like they did not like, oh, this needs to be launched at this point or whatever. They just want to help us do our thing. So we did not have a publisher breathing down our neck, which opened us up to, and also COVID, we had nowhere to go. We were open to explore, different avenues. So we pivoted a bit. We kind of picked up some freelance work, which kind of kept the lights on for me. And it kind of pushed out my burn rate. We took the time to pitch our game and shop it around to publishers. We took that time to work on marketing. We'll get to that. Also, we built our community, which is kind of a little special nugget we'll get to. For freelance, I just kind of want to keep this quick. This is mostly for story. Around April, May, we got picked up onto another project, kind of as a package deal. 9, working with RO. And so before we started working on that full time, we actually got Shot in the Dark kind of at a point where we could leave it alone. Like if we had to, we could launch it. We took like a weekend off and we got to work on 9. I also picked up other art gigs and kind of polished up Shot in the Dark on the side for this time. Lesther, you were still working full time at this point, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, and this is the time I touched briefly on before, where the game was complete. It was put down. If we wanted to launch that in the game in that state, we could have, and it would have been a great game. But we had a lot of time available to while we were pitching around. So we used that to, as Danny mentioned, get other freelance work and kind of take a break from Shot in the Dark. And it gave us a large window of time to polish any additional things, add any additional achievements we wanted, fix any of the last minute bugs that we knew were small, were there present and small, just tackle them during this time.
That's kind of I feel like there's a narrative that people stumble into. You feel logically, game done, launch. Like, no, you don't have to launch your game if you are in that position. I know a lot of people struggle with the opposite problem where they keep working on a game indefinitely. But if you find yourself in a position of you don't have to launch it, then don't. Like, take that time to explore different avenues, like we did. Which leads us into pitching, which had a pretty straightforward but interesting kind of experience with that. Doesn't hurt to ask. We got the best no. I'll go with that in a minute. Yeah, and when you're going to pitch to a publisher, come prepared with a lot of numbers and know your worth. Most publishers will not take you seriously if you undercut yourself, because they'll be like, oh, these guys do not know how much it costs to make a game. Just know, like, if your game is good and you say like an accurate price point, they'll take you seriously. So have dates in mind, have launch date windows, know your burn rate, like how long it's going to take you to make this, what are you going to make in that time. We were kind of unique where most of the game was done. So, and like a good chunk of publishers, every publisher is different. They don't necessarily want to get involved that late in the process. This takes some time. It is really just hurry up and wait. We spent a lot of time, like the better part of a month, putting all this together and sending all these out. And then it takes usually like you want to wait like maybe a month before you send like one follow-up email. Get one.
Yeah, you got to understand it from their perspective. They're getting dozens of these, if not hundreds of these, every day, every week. It's going to take some time for them to get through it all and get back to you. And if you're constantly pestering them, they're going to get like that sour taste in their mouth and just like not have a positive perception of your game.
And speaking of leaving a sour taste in your mouth, don't cater your pitch deck to your public. Like, don't just make a form, kind of pitch deck. Don't just apply to everybody. Like, make sure you're applying to publishers who would be, interested in the kind of game that you're making. Because you could potentially just there are publishers out there that focus on really narrative heavy kind of games, and if we showed up with our action pew pew demon game, they actually may have been upset that we just obviously did not look at what they're about, and low key blacklisted. So take the time, research who you're pitching to, and cater it. We actually got a lot of good responses, feedback to our pitch deck, which we have included a link to if you want to check it out. They're like, oh, you guys really prepared a whole thing. We made it fun. We made it flashy. We had numbers and things. But yeah. So yeah, about that best no. So we TLDR, we did not get picked up by a publisher, but I kind of think of it as getting your foot in the door, and also you're kind of practice doing this. Just you're going to get a lot of no's, and that's go into it with that mindset. Just yeah, they're probably going to say no, but shoot your shot.
And to add to that, you might actually not get any response at all. You might not get any response at all, or yeah, silence. It might take a long time for them to get back to you. And there was one case in one of the publishers we pitched to. They got back to us a couple of months later, which we at that point had already accepted that they were just not going to communicate with us anymore. But they did follow up and say, sorry, it took so long. It's just we have a lot of backlog. We did see your pitch. We will take some time, take a closer look at it, and get back to you within the week, kind of thing. And it was exciting.
Yeah, that was one where it was actually the best no, because it was the second VP who took time to handwrite, well, not handwrite, he didn't send us a letter, but he composed a personalized email to us, just hey, this is actually a really good project. We can't take it, and here's why. I had a very good breakdown. Where it was just they're one of those studios, they like to get involved early, and there isn't too much that they could have done to help us at this point. But they were really impressed with what we've done, and they're like, yeah, we see you guys are pumping out games a lot, so don't hesitate to reach out again for any future projects. So it was really encouraging that they took the time to be yeah, this is real good. You guys are onto something here. Keep going. So yeah, that gave us a big boost that we were on track with what we're doing. Yeah, just shoot your shot. Just yeah. And marketing. So short version, this is kind of something that we struggled with and still struggle with now. Short version is this is a whole other full-time job. It really is. It's not as simple as just sending out a tweet every now and then. Ideally, every dev team should be, you have the programmer, and you have the artist, and then you should also have the business person and the marketing, just it should be those four things ideally, because this is a full-time job, every part of it. Trailers are huge. Always take more time than you think. If you can afford it, find a decent, somebody with experience doing video editing. We had to scramble to get our last one out. We did a pretty good job on it, but man, that was a late weekend. To get that, to throw that together, and that was recycling it even, woof. Yeah. Anything else about trailers, Lesther? We kind of threw that last one together.
No, it's just one of those things that you you have to consider when you launch your game. People want to see a video of your content, whether you announce it and possibly when you launch it. An announcement trailer, you don't want to really announce without some video of showing your gameplay, what's going on, and what the game is. Similarly, between your announcement date and your launch date or launch day, you do want to have a additional video potentially to say, hey, the game's available now. Look at all this cool stuff that we made. Yep, in those exact words. Yeah, that's it for trailers, I think.
Yeah, we did 3 total. We launched one with the demo, and then we had the announcement date, it's this is the date it's coming out, and then we had the actual launch day trailer, it's out now, we made it.
Yeah, and every time it is a very time consuming process. To give
Oh man.
yourself or the people you hire to make the videos a lot of time to work on it. It's also very collaborative, right? The storyboarder
Mhm.
will need to work with the video editor very closely to make sure that the message is being conveyed appropriately.
For each trailer, like I was even when like we did reach out and like paid other people to help, like I was still really hands on, like in the room working on those things before COVID. But yeah, they're huge, and also kind of a little small thing. I'm not sure if I can confirm this, but I have heard it. When you kind of launch Steam, like when you like say like your game is now available for maybe not, it's coming soon essentially. You want to have a trailer there, and you want to have a really polished one because you do get like a supposedly get like a good like boost because like they kind of feature you more because you're like new in the algorithm, so you get like a like I want to say like a 2 week or so boost. You want to kind of like capitalize on that. So have like a trailer. Don't launch your Steam page without a trailer. That's the short version. But yeah, so as we struggled with this, one of the answers we came up with is we essentially threw a lot of money at a PR firm, and that was a big help. It did not solve all of our problems, but it was huge. And essentially, what they did, we reached out to Evolve PR. They're based out of Canada, and we went with their cheapest option. Um, and essentially, that package was essentially like a Steam key distributor. And also, they did like some PR pushes. I think they did like two the course of like what was it, a month or two?
Yeah, and essentially what they provided for us in the marketing that we were lacking was reach, right? We were trying to get a
Mhm.
lot of people to see the game, hear about the game, see some content, where we couldn't reach those individuals ourselves.
They were pretty targeted about it too. They didn't just like throw Steam. They have the database where they're like, oh, we know this guy who's really into pixel art. They cover this all the time. Da, 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 da. So it was very targeted, um, distribution of keys and reach and outreach. It kind of, I'm sure that's why we got most of a lot of the stuff that we got, which we'll talk about a little later. Um, so it is hard, but I do have some hope, which is there was a lot that kind of came out of um, just making the game and just putting it out there. This funny story is I was actually working with a mentor out of Magic who like had like marketing experience. They're kind of like walking me through the process of like how to pitch to like outlets like your rock your PC gamer, your rock paper shotgun, how to approach them and be like, hey, can you feature my game? Here's a build. How to go about doing that. It was essentially that taking what they gave me and trying it, I stumbled on the fact that PC Gamer featured our demo. Also, turn on Google Analytics, kids. So name your game something that isn't a common phrase, because Google Analytics, you'll get lost. But yeah, we got a lot of attention um, despite our shortcomings. Like people noticed us. If you make something good and you put it out there, you'll get traction. Like itch.io exploded on its own before we did anything. There were people from day one who were just blowing up our comments and just popping in the Discord. So like if you build it, you will get some traction if you make something of quality. Not saying lean on that, like to capitalize on it and go with it as much as you can, but if you make something good, they will show up. This brings us to community. Elephant in the room during this time, we were working, back, isolated and everything. And for me, working at the incubator, they provided like a whole desk and everything. Like that was like, I had never worked in a space like that before, and that was huge for me. Just being able to collaborate with people like on a daily basis and see what other people are working on and just go back and forth. Like that was new and amazing. And then COVID was like, nah, you're going back into your box. So to try to hold on to that, I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna be on Discord every Thursday if you want to hang out, co-work, that'd be cool. And this is kind of one of the best accidents we stumbled on, and it exploded and became something really special. So the Possum House Discord, we host every Thursday night, like our fireside co-working chat. And we have a bit of a reputation now, apparently. But we've always thought of ourselves as kind of like the like wholesome pub, of ROC Game Dev. Like we're like a branch. It's like where everyone can kind of relax a little bit. It's still like a very, like safe and wholesome environment where we can just like kind of hang out and just talk stupid stuff and make games. And yeah, like it's just been one of the highlights of this whole experience, honestly. But yeah, so community is huge for all those warm fuzzy feelings, but also some practical ones. Haha. Having an external perspective is huge. As indies, as working, creatives, and you need me and Lesther. We push ourselves really hard, and we always think we're never doing enough. But then, like when we hang out with you guys, or we see the people, are just like, "Oh man, you guys doing so great." We're like, "What?" That's kind of important. Like, you gotta like when you're so laser focused and like in the trenches, you can't really see where you are, and that's just it's good to have that feedback. And also, you kind of give yourself accountability, personal and professional, because you guys at ROC Game Dev, like we make sure that we don't crunch. Like we make sure we're drinking water. Like it's like you guys like we all check in on each other to make sure we're all doing okay. So it's like we work hard, but we have to make sure we're happy, healthy, and all that stuff. So you guys have looked out for us, and we try to look out for you, and that's just how it's been. Then there's kind of professional accountability. It's this is a little more boring. It's like if you have like a playtest coming up, you need to like if you pick a date, you have to make that. You have to make sure everything's done and ready for that. Like people, it's when you're out there working and you have like kind of a open studio like we do. People can kind of notice like you guys aren't getting a lot of levels done, or you've been working on the animation for a while, Denny. So it's like it kind of pushes you to like make sure you're productive and getting stuff done and meeting your deadlines. TLDR, we love you guys. Launch thing, did it. So we spoiler alert, we did not make all the money, but we did get featured, like essentially hit what like a kind of like cult like hidden gem cult following kind of that's kind of where we're at. We were featured in, so everyone who's there, not a lot of people played it, but everyone who did like loves it. Okay, a lot of people did play it, but so we were featured in PC Gamer. That was actually the third time that that Possum House has been featured. We were on the front page of itch.io for like a part of 2 months. So that was huge. And we were on 3 podcasts, and we've lost count how many times like we've been like streamed and there's other reviews floating around on like Twitter or YouTube. I'm still stumbling on them like to this day. Had a very warm reception. Like everyone who played it was just like, oh wow, this was amazing. Like the worst reviews that we got were like, I don't get it, but I see that there's cool things going on here. Or it's like, this is just not my kind of game, but there's a lot of new, unique things going on. So it was a smooth launch. We did have some bugs, but yeah. So me and Lesther, we wrongly assumed that we could just hit the button and walk away.
I wouldn't say wrongly assumed. I think is that under the stress of releasing it all, we forgot about the post-launch activities. Fun fact, Steam's API operates entirely in Pacific Standard Time. We had to get up early because I misread the time at 9 a.m., but it was really 6 in the morning for us and here in Eastern Time.
Those of you who know me, that was not a good time.
No, but we were tired when we hit the button.
Yeah, you woke up early and I stayed up late. So yeah, it was a lot more work than we anticipated. We were actually planning to work on something else for the month of January. We were wrong. We were responding to emails constantly. We had to like set up those those interviews. We had bugs to jump on. no game breaking ones. Actually, like all the bugs we had were actually just turned into more like kind of marketing content and like funny goofs. So like there was nothing that was like embarrassing. We had a very smooth launch, all things considered. So a few other things about launch. People are going to want to snag your OST, especially because Bosch did such a good job. I mean, as those of you know him, he's done all the music for Possum House games, and he somehow turns my weird, strange, esoteric demands into awesome soundtracks every time. So if you got one of those, people are going to want your OST, so have one ready. And then also other post stuff, we are potential, all those things that I said like got pushed into stretch goals 1 through infinity, that we might come back to potential DLCs. Might do, and then we'll also be doing sales, and then we might be doing updates. Like, so Shot in the Dark is done, but we're still kind of supporting it. So there's always more work. Again, like even though if your game's done, don't launch it, and just because your game's launched doesn't mean it's done. There's always more to do. Yeah. So in summation, I think the best way to kind of break it down is like we're good devs. We stuck to what we know, and we did that right. And then like business is its own other thing. So we're good devs, but we're working on being a better business. So what worked? Like the game, we stuck to our MVP approach, and like we had because we stuck to that, we had a game that was finished really early on, which gave us a lot of flexibility to work on other stuff, and even like polish that product up to like a mere machine. So we didn't have to worry about it. Game was done. Game was complete really early. So many games just their ending gets rushed or whatever. We had that nailed down. And then what needs work, obviously, like I said before, our marketing. It's a whole other job, guys. Bandwidth, we tend to push ourselves really hard, and we always take on more than we can. That's something we deal with still. Your software limitations, construct, that kind of shot us in the foot. But so know what you're working with and what you can and can't do with it. Yeah, being a business and developer are two different things. So touching on again like that quote unquote worst case scenario, also apply that to our like what Possum House is as a whole. So not to be completely bleak, we look at it like, even though Shot in the Dark really did not make all the money, we built up our professional portfolios. Like we now both have something that is solid under our belts that we can be like, yeah, we made this. And because of it, like we've both gotten work out of it, like directly or indirectly. Like, I mean, I have a new part-time job because of the work I've done in game development over the past year or two. So like the success isn't just like money. So yeah, like we're getting noticed and we've been getting work. Anything else you want to say for summation?
I think you pretty much covered it, right? One of the bigger things was the bandwidth for me, with no considering I was doing a lot of this while having a full-time job. As I mentioned, we are still working on this. We do push ourselves pretty hard, but over time we are getting better at taking care of ourselves and making sure that we push things out rather than try to fit it all in within a specific time span. One of those ways was reaching out to people. It's a lot easier to just ask a question that someone may know the answer to, that they may have already gone through the weeks of struggle that you would have gone through had you not asked a question. There were many cases where I had actually gone through those weeks of struggle when someone else said, "Oh yes, it was just that thing, XYZ thing there." Like, oh, I wish I knew that 2 weeks ago. But those are the kind of things where you mentioned earlier, it could be very easy to get stuck in the midst of it all. It's hard to come up for air to kind of see how you've been doing, where you are. So take a moment to just do that every now and then.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And,
being a developer and a business are two very different things. They're
all different things.
very different buckets of work. Kind of have a mindset when you're developing a game, how you want to approach that. Whether you just want to make the game and just release it under another publisher or just release the game standalone, or if you're trying to build a business, a studio, or what have you. Um, it can get pretty messy if you try to do both at once, and you won't be giving either the attention and love it deserves. So do try to find out what your goal is there, and figure out how to best allocate your own time to dedicated time to either aspect of it, whether making the game or building up the studio. Doing both at once, possible, not recommended.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of jump off of what Lesther just said there. It's kind of, I guess, my closing remark. Because it's something I've been mulling over after launch and working on this presentation. It's a weird feeling of, so monetary value, I say this for a lot of devs and creatives out there. I mean, this is the most successful game we've made, like financially. We made more than $5. But don't equate financial success to the quality of your game. Because as objective as I can be, I know I made something special here. I got to make my game my way, and looking back, like I made all the right decisions. I had the best team, I had all the resources, and like the reviews. I mean, that's where I can step back. Is like, okay, like what I was going for came across, and people got it. That's to say, you can do everything right and still not, like that. There's a lot that's out of your hand when you're talking like working in this industry. So just be prepared for that. I actually not complaining. I'm actually quite content as an artist that I got to create this. But just kind of have that in mind when you're working this stuff. And your art is always worth making. And I think that's everything I've got to say. So yeah,
Yes.
Thank you for letting us rant. And if you have any questions, let us know. Lesther.
These are all the ways to reach us. And just to kind of reiterate that point you just made, success is measured not solely by the financial numbers. It's however we choose to define that. But yeah, if anyone has any questions now or in the future, this is our contact information. You can find us on Discord, Twitter, our website, the internets.
Yeah. What?
Cool. Yeah, we'll hang out for a little bit to let some questions roll in on the chat.
I will say it was funny when Lesther brought up the whole like bandwidth thing and like working on something or struggling with something that someone could handle in like fraction of the time. That's literally what I hired Lesther for. Like I was in my head early on, I had it that I was like, I'm gonna make this whole game myself. Like it was an ego. It was an ego thing. And then like Lesther solved problems that literally would have taken me 2 weeks in like an hour, if not like 20 minutes. So take your ego out of it and just like if you need help, like just know that for me, like I knew that the project would be better off if like I reached out and like was like took my ego out of it and was like, hey, you can do this better and faster, and frees me up to work on art and levels. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I liked the most about this is that this was not just we completed the game, but this is also a journey that you brought a lot of people on. A lot of people were involved in. We went on it together, so at the end of the road, we're just like, crap, we still have this huge journey we went on. That's awesome. That's great.
Would do it all the same way again. Do it all over again.
And it'll come out of that journey. It's like, yeah, we did it. So tired. All right, let's go again.
Do it all over. Let's do it all over again. Yeah, if nobody has any questions, a quick shout out to everybody else who's involved. There's me, there's Lesther, there's Bosch, who always says so good with the beeps and the boops. Ashley Garcelle, who makes sure we're legal, all of our paperwork and stuff. Eric Valdez did the haunting, beautiful credit song to Shot in the Dark. And then Nick Heigl and Nate Moore, who helped out with our trailers.
We have a question from chat here. How was it working with an external marketing company on your indie title? Do you feel like it was a good return on value? If not, at least in sales, at least in save time?
Want to tackle that one, Lesther? Or you want me to do it?
I can tackle it. Overall, I think it saved us a huge amount of time that we would have had to spend uh, building up that reach, right? Like as we mentioned earlier, they provided the ability to target a huge audience that were interested in our type of game, right? Not just like FPSs or just games in general, but specifically platforms, pixel platformers, um, difficult games, this kind of theme. They provided all of this analysis and list generation that basically allowed us to show our game to a wider audience that we would not have been able to do without, I don't know, I'd say about 2-3 months of time dedicated solely to just building that reach up. It did save us a huge amount of time, and I think it was a good return in that sense. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Matt.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely was worth the investment. One thing, we were very confident in the game that we had, so we're like, all right, yeah, this is worth spending money on. And I'm like 90% confident, like we would not have made anywhere near as much money in sales as we did if we had not gone that route. Also, I don't know if we would have gotten onto the podcast and stuff like we did. So like it was definitely worth it for us. Like no
Or all the reviews that that are still coming in.
So definitely worth it. Would we do it for every game? No. But for Shot in the Dark, we're like, yeah, no, definitely. We went the cheap route.
All right.
Money.
We have another one here. Looking at what Possum House wants to make in the future, are you going to lean towards what the market might want or what Possum House wants to create as artists?
So me and Lesther have actually, we kind of hammered this out really early on. We didn't want to wind up as, we didn't want to be a studio that like, did like, we didn't want to be completely contractors. We always wanted to be making what we wanted to make. And so like, no, we're always going to try to make what we want, which is like, we want to do very experimental, new ideas that we're having fun with. Because like, that's why a lot of people want to be in this industry, is they want to make what they want to make. And so like on the side, like we will pick up work, but fundamentally we want Possum House games that we put like our name on to be like something we want, that we're passionate about, that we want to make. I think because of what we shoot for is kind of like, we try to make weird games with weird mechanics. It's kind of, instead of going after, honestly, I'm trying to be practical here, is we're not going after trends because that game already exists. We try to make something that people haven't seen before. And the worst people are made like, oh, this is weird, or the best thing would be like, oh, this is weird. So we're always trying to like try something different. We specifically don't chase trends. I thought cowboys were cool before Red Dead.
When was the last time you saw a talking cactus?
Right?
All right, here's another one. Do you already have the next prototypes in the oven?
Oh man, we always have prototypes going. I kind of left this out in the thing, but we've always got ideas, and we're always bouncing back and forth. So what we do is we say yes to everything, but we don't work on something if we don't have the bandwidth. So like we'll talk about ideas that we have, then we purposely gate ourselves not to just go hog wild, like because we already have enough work on our plates. But yeah, we have like a bunch of prototypes. We have one we are working on literally last weekend.
Currently
have the project. We're still working on 9. We have a backlog of things we're working on. We're definitely aiming to go smaller because we want to be more rapid. But yeah, we've got stuff lined up. We haven't stopped working.
Is there a Star Child that you're working on particularly?
Honestly, right now we're just we want to get into the just habit of making games smaller and faster. There's one that like we're really kind of jazzed about the current prototype we have. It'll be a cool little title to throw out there. We have some bigger projects that I've been itching to get to that I won't drop here, but if you know me, you might know what it is. But that's a little while off.
Very cool. I have another one. Do you find yourselves wanting / tempted to work on projects with larger scope, or do you feel infinitely drawn to small projects? You actually, or I'm sorry, innately drawn to small projects. You actually kind of already answered this, but
it's this whole thing has definitely been about that. We like making small things. We actually want to get out from under working on big projects after our experience working on like the Sword in the Slime, Shot in the Dark, 9. We kind of have fun working really small and fast. And even that, like Shot in the Dark, as much as it's like maybe definitely the biggest game that I've done. It's still a small game, like in the grand scheme of things. It's like there's one mechanic and like it's maybe 2-hour game. We like to keep it small and silly and fun, experimental.
Yeah, and I do find that it gives us the ability to go experimental, right? We may have an idea that we want to experiment with, but if it's a larger scope project, then we'll be experimenting with the same idea for a long period of time. And the passion that drives, at least me specifically, to explore and try new things, the curiosity, hey, how would this work? That gets blocked by the fact that you still have this larger project that you haven't completed on your plate.
And
So
on a practical
going
note,
small and experimenting allows us to do that.
and then on a practical note, like I think that like honestly every game is a gamble. And on bigger projects, like your investment, like it's there's a lot of risk involved. Where we stay small and light, like it's not a big deal. If we spent a month working on something and it doesn't make any money, it's like all right, as opposed to spending cough 3 years on something, cough. Sword in the Slime, like that kind of hits a little different. Stay small and nimble.
got another one here. What were some of your strongest / biggest self-care strategies during Shot in the Dark?
Honestly, it was fireside chat, in our Discord. Just regularly hanging out with people and having that like consistent, just kind of base to fall back on. Like, yeah, far and away, that was the biggest one for me. Still kind of is.
Yeah, I think actually making the decision to take some time off, right? We like Denny mentioned, we were pushing ourselves pretty hard. But we made decisions like take a day off, no matter what our to-do list or our queue of tasks was looking like. We would take the time off and not really work. We'd chat here and there, but not specifically about game stuff or the work project we were currently working on. One of the particular things we did as well was our shortly before release of Shot in the Dark, we took 2 weeks off, a complete vacation from all game dev work. The game was packaged and ready to go for us to hit the button 2.5 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks before we actually hit the button. We didn't touch it at that point. We just went on vacation, took a little break, enjoyed the time after everything we've worked on to just enjoy some free time away from dev. And I think that was one of the biggest things we got. I mean, we hit the button and then we hit the background running again with all the post-launch activities. But I very much enjoyed that we decided to take those times off and make those decisions for ourselves.
And one thing that's been really that just kind of happened naturally, just with our kind of the demeanors, I guess, is me, like Lesther and I, again, like we push ourselves really hard, but we're also really good at like, I don't say yelling at each other, but just like, if I'm going too far, Lesther like, dude, just put it down, and I'll be like the same thing. I'm like, do not push yourself on this. Like, we're always checking each other, and like I think that's been like something really healthy. Like at the end of the day, like we push ourselves, but like we make sure we're not pushing the other to like overachieve or to get something done.
Yeah, I do very much enjoy that about the way we work. I often tell you, no, just don't worry about that for now. We'll worry about it some other time to either stop you from going too far. And I feel relieved when you tell me, no, it's not that big a deal. Don't stress it. We don't need that feature functionality working for right now. We can always push that off. And It's just nice to have that voice there to just say, hey, take a step. It's okay.
Yeah, that's probably one of the greatest benefits of having collaborators, is having somebody to check you kind of when you get a little too zoomed in on something.
Mm-hmm.
I also really love, I think, taking breaks regardless of what your timeline says is also super important. Like having built into your schedule, like, yes, we still have tasks to do, but we can stop for an extended weekend or something. I think that both of those are super good points.
Like I've recently have like I like specifically set time to like have like weekends off. And I've been more productive. Like it's not just like, you know, it's, you will be better at what you do if you rest. Like it's, if you, just because you quote unquote worked 60 hours, you're only going to get like maybe 25 actual hours of work out of that.
Can confirm, breaks are really helping me in my productivity. I feel like I can get a lot more into my flow state and get a lot of work done. It was a couple times where I did a sprint's worth of work in a single day, and I was very excited about that. But those are the kind of things that come from like taking breaks and things like that.
So drink your water, kids.
Yes, of course, drink your water. You're playing to the right crowd here, Denny. All right, well, with that, I think we're going to call it. Sam, do you have any wrap-up notes, stream coordinator?
Thank you so much, Denny and Lesther. That was fantastic. If you're tuning in watching, you can always catch the archive of this on the ROC Game Dev YouTube channel. That's all I've got.
All right.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for this great postmortem.
Bye-bye.